everyone, it's Mary. Apologies for the lighting, but when I woke up this morning there was a lovely sun and the lighting was just perfect, and I thought, well, let's just get ready and film. And I have to admit that I woke up quite late, but now it's raining and it's all dark, and I'm so sorry. I hope you can still see me well, and probably you can hear the rain because I have a skylight just right there, but it shouldn't be a problem. So today I want to talk about the books that I read in the month of April. April was a very good reading month for me because I managed to finish 6 books, which to me is a lot. And actually, if I keep up this pace, and I don't want to jinx it really, I will think and maybe do something different and not monthly wrap-ups, but maybe a wrap-up every kind of 4 books that I read. I think 4 is the perfect number to be talking about in a video for me. I don't know why, but when I'm watching videos, I don't mind watching, very long videos that are like 30 minutes long, but personally I get very nervous when it's me talking and I know that it's been going on for a long time, and when I'm editing I'm desperate to just cut some parts so that I don't make it that long. I obviously don't want to cut things that that I really wanted to say about those books, so I want to be able to relax while talking about the books. We'll see if I manage to keep this video under 20 minutes, but it's going to be hard because I have a lot to say about the books that I read. So as usual, I'll start with the books with the kind of lowest rating, the books that I enjoyed the least, and then work my way up to the best books that I read this month. The first book that I will talk about is a book that we picked for the Tales & Co. book club. And this is a Chinese book that has been translated from the Chinese by Bruce Holmes. And I'm very bad at this. I never say the translator's name and it's wrong, so apologies. It is The Last Quarter of the Moon by Zijian. It's not that I did not enjoy this book, because luckily I enjoyed all the books that I read this month. And this was just a little bit underwhelming to me. The protagonist of the novel is an elderly woman. She's in her 90s, and she talks about her life and the life of the tribe in which she lived in. So it kind of spans a very wide period of time, because when it starts, I think we're in the 20s, and then when it finishes, we're in the 200s. So it's a very long time, and you get to know really the life of this tribe and their traditions as you go along. They are called Evenki, and it's kind of an indigenous Chinese tribe living in the forest, and you're kind of removed from, society in this book, and I really enjoyed being transported in this kind of different kind of world, while at the same time being in of course our world, because alongside the events that are happening in the tribe, there are wars going on and invasions, a shifting in politics and in their environment as well. So the story itself was fascinating, and it was easy to follow along. I did not get bored reading this book. But I would say that it didn't really leave me with anything, which sounds very harsh, but it's true. And the problem with this book was it was very repetitive in its structure. I don't really want to spoil what happens, but it's just, a kind of situation would happen that maybe had happened before, and you would just know how it would be resolved. It's not that I wanted this book to surprise me, but it was just predictable in some parts. And yeah, I did not like that. But otherwise, it was a very interesting book. If it sounds like something that could interest you, definitely check it out. It's written very well, and I think the translation is very good, although it's hard to say because, of course, I don't read Chinese, but it flows very nicely. And actually, Meonicorn over at the Bookish Land, that is Chinese, she said that she skimmed through the actual Chinese version and she thought it was well translated. So yeah, probably the translation is good enough. And yes, I was also very interested to know whether the author was familiar with this kind of tribe life and how she got to know these things, if she knew anything at all, or if it's just all in her mind. And I don't know, that's something that I did not check out, and I probably should, because it would be interesting to know if there's actually truth behind what she says or what is her experience towards this kind of life. So yes, then I have a pick for the Read Around the World book club, and this is Claire of the Sea Light by Edwidge Danticat, and this was the book for Haiti. I think this is not translated. I think she wrote this in English. I could be wrong, but I searched for the name of the translator and I couldn't find it. I'm pretty sure that she wrote this in English. This book was, again, quite a pleasant read. It was nothing groundbreaking, but I feel like it really gave a glimpse of the life in Haiti, and it really kept me interested and hooked to keep on reading and know what was going to happen. But I wouldn't call it really a novel. I think it's more of a short story collection in which all the stories are very much interconnected, and it kind of wraps up in a very cyclical way. It starts with the disappearance of this girl in this poor fishing town. She lives with her father, and he has struggles looking after her mother dies. So he's kind of thinking about giving her up to another woman, and the night that he takes this decision, she just disappears. So it starts with this kind of event, and then from there you get to know the people that maybe are involved in her life or maybe not. They're just in this town and their lives kind of connect to one another. I liked some stories very much and some I didn't really care about, so I would say this is a pretty solid 3-star read, but again, nothing spectacular. When I read a book from another country that I don't know anything about, I'm kind of looking for clues as to how to really approach the kind of story based on the context in which it's set in. And a book set in a different country has not the requirement to provide you with the context, with the right context for you to understand, because that's not the point of the book. The book is not, let's just talk about Haiti. It's entirely my fault when I look for those kind of clues, but I loved that I could actually get into the story even though I don't know anything about Haiti, and without lecturing me on how Haiti works. Of course, a novel can't do that. I felt like I was included in this society. I think that is a very positive thing. So definitely recommend this one if it sounds again like something that you would enjoy. Next up, we'll jump into another country because again, this was another pick for the Read Around the World book club. It is a book from Kuwait and it's called The Hidden Light of Objects by Al-Nakib. And I don't think this was translated. Again, I think this was written in English. But if I'm wrong, please correct me. And again, this is another short story collection. And while I don't think that this one really was better than, for example, Claire of the Sea Light, I feel like I kind of enjoyed myself a little bit more while reading this. But this doesn't mean that this worked better as a book. I do think that Claire of the Sea Light has a quality that this one has not, which is cohesion. So these stories are kind of interconnected, but it's not that clear how sometimes, or maybe I did not understand. Between each story you would have another kind of story that was kind of going on a separate way, but also kind of interconnected with those stories. It was kind of complicated, I think. So I do think that this one does not work as well as the other one, for example. But I was strangely attracted to this book and to these stories and the way in which they were written. So I found myself racing through this book, and I actually read it pretty quickly because it took me 3 days. And usually I don't read a book in 3 days. As I was saying for the other book, this one does not really let you in kind of gently and sweetly into their culture, and it's kind of hard to understand all the little nuances that she makes regarding their lives and their politics or their way of living. It's more difficult to get into this kind of culture, but it worked for me. To summarize what this book is about is very hard because it talks about a lot of things from children to adults and how they cope with destruction, with war, with loss, and obviously objects are the very protagonists of each story. In each story that you get here, an object is prominent and has, the most importance. So I thought that was a very, you know, it was a clever idea, but the execution of the stories, I felt like sometimes it was a bit, the language was a bit too poetic, and you could see the intention of the author. I don't like when you can see the intention of the author, and it was a bit overwritten in my opinion, a bit too much, a bit overwhelming. I read, when I was reading reviews, I don't remember who it was that described this book as being in an elevator with a woman that had this kind of overwhelming perfume that was kind of nauseating after a while, even though maybe it was kind of a sweet smell. So yeah, I felt kind of the same, but I can't say that I did not enjoy this book because I was very interested to know how it progressed, and some of the stories I really enjoyed. Next up is a non-fiction book that is Delusions of Gender by Cordelia Fine, and I talked briefly about this book, I think in one of my last videos, in which I was saying that I had started, you know, reading this book and I already had a lot of thoughts, and I do have a lot of thoughts about this book. So I'm probably thinking to do kind of a discussion video or maybe a separate video review, just because I don't think I can be exhaustive in this kind of format, but I'll try my best. So it talks about, it says here, the real science behind sex differences. Basically in here, the author challenges the scientific and neuroscientific theories that have been going on for a long time and that are basically taken for granted by our society, in which it's explained how the female brain differs from the male brain from birth, with kind of experiments, tests, and just all that jazz that goes around this kind of scientific beliefs. I really enjoyed this book, and I felt like I was kind of in a conversation with the author. I would get angry at her sometimes, I would cheer for her and just underline all the things, and also I would just talk to myself basically in the book. I scribbled all over this book, so it was a very active reading experience, and that's why it really took me maybe a bit more. While I think the writing style is very dense and full of facts, it's actually pretty smooth, so I didn't find this hard to follow, but you do have to have a lot of concentration while reading it. I think books like this one are very much needed in our society, because it's true that sometimes we just have this like preconceived notions about gender and about, you know, how our brain works. We're prone to think that we have like innate qualities in our brain that are kind of hardwired since birth, and this kind of proves that it's not really like that. It's very much more complicated than that, and just state that we are different from birth is a very big statement to make, and probably not the right one. It talks a lot about socialization and how even very young kids, even babies, are socialized very early on, and sometimes even before they're born they actually referred at and talked about differently whether it's a girl or a boy. And I agree with like most of the things that she says, and so I think more people should read this kind of books and just, you know, set aside this kind of preconception that we are so innately different, so that, like, for example, girls or like women are more emotional, and that they show more their emotions and they are more keen to notice different emotions, while males are more skilled on the practical side, and just their brain is not constructed to feel this kind of empathy, which is bullshit. Everybody is guilty of having some sort of preconceptions towards this kind of talk, just because it's so much ingrained in our culture and in our way of living, that even though you recognize that it's wrong, you can't help but feel in a certain way. So like it says, for example, that boys are supposedly better at maths than girls, so probably a girl, when she approaches math, even though she doesn't care and she thinks that this is a bullshit, the back of her head, this statement will kind of grow on her and actually affect the way she approaches maths, because there is this preconception that she will not be as good as a boy. It was well written and well researched, so it has a lot of footnotes that start here and a lot of references that you could check on. The only fault that has this book, the only problem that I had with its tone, is that it's very much biased, and if she claimed to be biased, then it wouldn't be a problem. She kind of wrote this book to prove a point, and she's not really giving that much in comparison. It felt, you know, not only biased, but also like she was cherry picking a little bit. Sometimes she would debunk research and then simultaneously taking advantage from the points in this research that were in favor of her theory, her own theory. So I thought it was a bit unfair. She was reaching a little bit too hard sometimes, and I did not like that. When the honest thing to say, I think, about this whole argument is just that we basically don't know anything about human brains. And these researches, 90% of them were bullshit. We should just maybe take a step back and rethink about some of these theories and do our research better. But anyway, I'm sure I made a mess with this kind of review, but it was very much thought-provoking and very useful to me, and I think I'm going to get back to this one often and just draw inspiration from this. It was a very interesting experience, a very valuable one, and I kept talking about this book to everybody, so definitely recommend this one. And then I have another non-fiction book that is a parenting book. I told you how I was interested in parenting books because I am about to become a parent, so I'm very interested to, you know, to see what's around, but I'm not really sure on which book to select because I don't have experience on that field, and I don't know anybody that read, you know, books about parenting that could recommend them to me. So I kind of chose at random what I thought was appealing to me, and I chose The Newbie's Guide to Positive Parenting by Rebecca Eanes. And this book is so slim that when it arrived, I was already let down by this because I was like, how a book about parenting can be so short? I mean, I imagine there's a lot to say about parenting and about children. There are a lot of spaces, the font is very large, so I thought this is lazy writing, you know, and it's a bit like it, I have to admit, like sometimes it was a bit repetitive, and I don't mind that much that books are repetitive when they're, you know, non-fiction and they're talking about notions that should get into your brain, so like the repetition in this case can work. But I felt like a little bit cheated on because it was that short and that repetitive, and I just thought it could be like a website article and that's it, and not, you know, an entire book. I was hoping she would kind of expand on some thoughts and on some things because it was a very interesting book. I really enjoyed it. It's very hard to do, I think. The positive parenting approach is in the middle between being a permissive parent, in which basically the kid just does whatever he wants and just throws things at you and insults you, and you're like, please honey, get off the table. And you know, the other part is the strict parent that just slaps the kid or just yells no all the time. It's, you know, more towards the permissive part, I guess, but as it states, like right away when it starts, it says this book is not about being a permissive parent. It's about, you know, having rules and making children understand that they have to stick to them without being kind of a dictator. So I really enjoy this. It's not that you don't have to say no, but you kind of have to work your way around it, and you have to try and not yell, and that's something that I'm very concerned about because I am a yeller. I yell all the time, and I know that it's wrong. And you know, it talks about the importance of being kind, and that's something that I'm really striving to do, to be more kind, to be kinder towards people, towards my partner, who I love a lot. But you know, sometimes kindness kind of gets lost in the everyday life, and you know, being hectic and stressful and everything else. So this was very inspiring and kind of helps you through, even with some examples of situation. It also talks about yourself as a person and how to obviously give the best example, and to do that you have to be aware of who you are and how you behave towards other people, which is very important and probably not stressed upon enough. It was just very sweet, and I just hoped it was a bit longer and a bit more elaborated. Also, what I really enjoyed is that it doesn't talk about gender, or even, you know, it doesn't address you as the mother, as you should be the one who has to know how parenting works. It works for mothers and fathers. It's just not targeted towards women. Okay, so that was very positive, and I liked that, even though my husband wouldn't go near any book for the matter. But I kind of read the entire book to him since it was so short and so easy to go through. And definitely recommend this one if you're expecting, and even if you're not, if you are interested in education and you have kids, I would recommend this one. The last book that I read was kind of a revelation to me. It was so freaking good, and I gave it 5 stars. And I'm not really sure I gave a lot of books 5 stars this year. I think probably 2 or 3 books have gotten 5 stars from me. So I was kind of bummed that this was happening, because obviously every book that I read, well, not every book, but I would love to have a lot of books that I give 5 stars to. But anyway, it was The Birds and Other Stories by Daphne du Maurier, and this is my first Daphne du Maurier book. And actually this was the pick for April of the Tales & Co. book club. So it kind of fit perfectly with my plan that I wanted to, you know, read this before the others, and then read my cousin Rachel, and then I don't know whether I would pick up Rebecca or other things, but giving 5 stars to a short story collection for me is huge. So I cannot wait to read more of her works and to get into her writing style even more. I loved it. Every story that I finished here, I was like eager to get to the other one and see what else was in store. That's just how I felt towards basically all the stories. Honestly, it's not that it doesn't have any flaws. It has flaws, but I did not care a bit about those flaws. One of the stories was not my favorite. They were not all 5 stars stories to me, but I did not care. The story that I enjoyed the least was Kiss Me Again, Stranger. It's not that I did not like it, but yes, it's just the one that I enjoyed the least. So the start is a bomb, because I was not familiar with The Birds. I did not see the Hitchcock film, which I plan on watching now, and it was just bone-chilling and very eerie. I was reading it in bed, and actually, you know, I'm a scaredy cat, and I was like, is this supposed to be horror? And I kept on reading, and I was like, what if this is horror? I cannot make it. But then it was fine. It was not, you know, that scary, but it was creepy enough for me to just look around weirdly. My husband was sleeping, and I was at night in my bed and reading that story. And it was a bit haunting. The way in which she writes is just so, it sucks you in completely. And even the second story that I read, a lot of people did not enjoy that much, which is Monte Verita, and I was so eager to get to it every time, because I could not finish that story in one sitting. So I kept on thinking about the story and how I wanted to know what else was going to happen. I enjoyed every story in this one. Probably I'm not very coherent here in explaining my thoughts about Daphne du Maurier, but I would definitely recommend her, and this short story collection is golden. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I wasn't too incoherent, because I know that I lost track of what I was saying sometimes. Please talk to me about the books, you know, that I showed you, if you read them or not, whether you liked them or not, and whatever you have to say, let's chat in the comments down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!